The crisis inside world football has moved again. 2 days ago, UEFA, the Asian Football Confederation, and CONCACAF issued a joint open letter accusing FIFA President Gianni Infantino of breaking trust through deception and placing himself above the organisation he is supposed to lead. Now the opposition appears to be moving beyond statements. The Guardian reports that those three confederations are working on a new framework for how world football could be governed, including FIFA's role, its structure, and how its money should be distributed. If Infantino refuses to engage, that framework could become the platform of a challenger in the 2027 presidential election. In the most extreme scenario, it could even become a template for something outside FIFA. At the same time, the boycott threat is about to meet reality. The Under 20s Women's World Cup begins in Poland on the 5th of September. It is the first FIFA tournament scheduled since UEFA members backed the boycott, yet France has said it intends to play. New Zealand has confirmed its participation, and Poland says it has received no notice of any team withdrawing. So this crisis has entered a more complicated stage. The opposition to Infantino is becoming more organised, but turning political anger into an actual sporting rupture is much harder than threatening one. So, is Gianni Infantino losing control of FIFA? At the end of July, FIFA proposed creating a commercial subsidiary valued at around $20 billion. That company would have operated FIFA competitions, including the men's and women's World Cups. FIFA planned to sell roughly 20% to outside investors, raising about $4.2 billion. To be precise, FIFA was not literally selling the World Cup. The trophy was not about to turn up in the reception of a private equity fund beside a bowl of complimentary mints. FIFA would still have owned the majority, but outside investors would have owned part of the company operating some of the most valuable competitions in world sport. Critics argued that a governing body is supposed to be a custodian, not simply the owner of an asset it can monetize, and the Confederation said something this important had been developed without meaningful consultation. That turned a financial proposal into a governance crisis. Reporting at the time suggested FIFA member associations could receive around $40 million each if the plan went ahead by a September deadline. FIFA routinely distributes development money. For smaller associations, that funding can build pitches, academies, women's programs, and coaching systems. So, offering money to members is not automatically improper, but the timing was politically explosive. Associations were being asked to consider a major change to FIFA's commercial structure while being shown a very large financial benefit if they approved it. That does not prove corruption. It explains why suspicion grew so quickly. Then Europe escalated. All 55 UEFA associations backed the threat to boycott FIFA competitions if the proposal continued and unless the wider governance concerns were addressed. That is about as close as football administration gets to putting the nuclear codes on the table. Europe does not control FIFA, but it contains many of the world's strongest national teams, richest leagues, and most commercially valuable players. A World Cup without UEFA would still technically be a World Cup. Commercially and competitively, it would be something very different. CONCACAF rejected the proposal. The AFC attacked the lack of consultation. Suddenly, the balance of power inside FIFA became visible. FIFA can write regulations. Those regulations matter only while enough of football agrees to follow them. On the 31st of July, Infantino abandoned the stake sale proposal. FIFA later apologised to its 211 member associations and promised an internal review of what had happened. At a crisis meeting in Morocco, FIFA's management leadership reaffirmed its support for Infantino. That looked like a possible escape route. The commercial plan was gone. FIFA could apologise for the process, promise lessons had been learned, and move on. Except its opponents did not accept that an internal FIFA process was enough. The joint UEFA, AFC, and CONCACAF letter says the episode requires a fully independent third party investigation, with FIFA itself playing no role in controlling it. The argument had stopped being about the proposal. It was now about trust. On the 7th of August, Norwegian FA President Lise Klaveness said Infantino should resign because he no longer possessed the institutional trust needed to lead FIFA. Then came the joint letter from UEFA, the AFC, and CONCACAF. Together, those three confederations contained 136 of FIFA's 211 member associations. That does not mean 136 votes are automatically lined up against Infantino. Several national associations inside those confederations have already broken with the regional position and backed him. But politically, the scale of the coalition matters. The letter accuses Infantino of breaking trust through deception and says football needs leadership that serves the game rather than commands it. US soccer and Canadian soccer have also backed calls for meaningful changes to FIFA's governance, transparency, and accountability. And the argument is no longer merely about forcing FIFA to abandon one commercial plan. It is becoming a debate about what FIFA itself should look like. FIFA is not accepting the criticism quietly. It has accused opponents of taking part in a concerted effort to undermine Infantino and argues that leadership challenges should happen through FIFA's statutes and democratic procedures. There is a serious point underneath that defence. FIFA is a membership organisation. Its president is elected by national associations. Europe may generate enormous football revenues, but UEFA does not receive extra presidential votes because its leagues earn more television money. Each association gets one vote. That is why the politics of FIFA can look very different from the economics of football, and it is why Infantino is far from finished. The Confederation of African Football has backed Infantino. CAF represents 54 FIFA members. Mexico has supported him despite CONCACAF's opposition. Argentina, Paraguay, Ecuador, and Bolivia have also publicly backed his leadership. Reuters' latest count says almost 70 FIFA member associations have publicly said they will vote for Infantino. That is nowhere near enough to declare the election over, but it demonstrates why the idea that European pressure alone can remove a FIFA president is misleading. Infantino would need a two-thirds majority in the first round of the presidential vote or a simple majority in later rounds. Potential rivals have until the 18th of November to declare their candidacy, and the opposition still faces a basic problem. Criticising Infantino is easier than agreeing on who should replace him. The Guardian reports that CONCACAF President Victor Montagliani is currently viewed as the most likely potential challenger, but he has not declared a FIFA candidacy, so the presidential contest remains open rather than settled. This is where the politics begins to collide with the football. The Under-20 Women's World Cup is scheduled to begin in Poland on the 5th of September. It will be the first FIFA competition since UEFA's associations backed the boycott position. If European teams withdraw, the dispute stops being about a governance argument conducted through letters and becomes a sporting crisis visible on the pitch. But, as of the 12th of August, that has not happened. Poland says it has received no information that any participating team plans to withdraw. France has said it intends to compete. New Zealand has confirmed it will take part. England and Canada have so far declined to say publicly what they will do, while the United States is expected to attend. That is important because it reveals the difficulty of turning a boycott threat into a functioning boycott. These are young players who have spent years trying to qualify for a World Cup. National associations have sporting responsibilities as well as political ones. A boycott designed to punish FIFA can also punish players who had nothing to do with the governance dispute. So Poland may tell us whether UEFA's threat is an immediate weapon or primarily leverage for negotiations. The newest development may be the most important for the longer term. According to The Guardian, UEFA, CONCACAF, and the AFC are now working together on a policy framework for how world football should be governed. The questions reportedly include what FIFA's role should actually be, how the organisation should be structured, and how its financial reserves should be distributed among member associations. That matters because it moves the opposition from protest to proposition. Saying that Infantino should change is one thing, explaining what should replace the current model is much harder. If the framework becomes the programme of a presidential challenger, the 2027 election could become a genuine argument about two different versions of FIFA. And if relations deteriorated far enough, the same ideas could theoretically inform an alternative structure outside FIFA. A breakaway remains an extreme and highly complicated possibility. International calendars, qualification, player release, refereeing, disciplinary systems, and commercial contracts all depend on the existing structure. But the fact that senior confederations are even discussing what could come next tells us how far the dispute has travelled. There is a danger in making the whole story about one man. FIFA is simultaneously a regulator, tournament organiser, development agency, and enormous commercial business. It writes rules while making money from the competitions those rules create. It distributes funding to associations that later vote for its president. And it has to balance regions whose economic power, football strength, and voting power are very different. Those tensions existed before Infantino. The failed stake sale simply exposed them. So, is Gianni Infantino losing control of FIFA? He has not lost the presidency. He still has powerful allies and a substantial public bloc of support. And the first practical test of the boycott threat has already revealed complications, with France saying it intends to play in the Under 20 Women's World Cup. But control is not only about surviving an election. Three major confederations are publicly accusing him of deception. They are demanding an investigation independent of FIFA. They are discussing alternative competitions. And they are now reportedly developing their own framework for how world football should be governed. That is much deeper than a failed investment proposal. FIFA tried to sell a minority stake in its commercial future. Instead, it opened a debate about the limits of its own authority. Nobody completely owns world football. FIFA has votes and regulations, UEFA has teams and money, confederations have competitions, players create the spectacle, broadcasters and sponsors finance it, supporters give the whole system its value. Gianni Infantino may still be president. The question now is whether his opponents can turn a revolt into an alternative. And that leads directly to the bigger question behind this crisis. FIFA versus UEFA, who really controls world football? Because this dispute has exposed the strange system of votes, money, competitions, and political power that actually keeps the global game together. That is where the next football brief is going. This has been the Nelson Brief, the context behind the story.